Welcome. This lesson is about Pythagorean's theorem. Pythagorean's theorem is basically a relationship between the three side lengths of a right triangle. Now, the first thing I want to emphasize is that a right triangle should always have this little square in the corner. And the two sides that form the right angle, this 90-degree angle, they're called legs, or the legs of a right triangle. Okay, the side that does not form the right angle, the longest side of the triangle, is called the hypotenuse. This word right here, hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. Okay, now the relationship is simply this, that if you take the side lengths of the two shorter sides, the two legs, and you square them, so if I take 8 and I square it, and I take 15 and I square it, and then add those two values together, it's going to equal the length of this longer side squared. It's going to equal that. And if you notice there's a little c there, it's going to equal c squared. So what you do is go 8 squared, 64. 15 squared is 225. I add those together and I get 9, 8, 289 equals that longest side's length squared. Now we need to either use a calculator or some computer to take the square root, because that's how we got to find the value of c. We square root 289 to actually find the value or length of side C. So I just grab a calculator and I'm square rooting 289, and I find out that that length of this hypotenuse, or the longest side, is a length 17. Now, one way that you might be able to easily remember the Pythagorean's theorem is to think of what square means, or to square a side. So what I'm going to say about that, what I mean by that, is imagine a square drawn on each side of the triangle. So if you draw a square on each side of the triangle, the two smaller squares, their area adds up to the larger square. Now that's a poor square, I know, but you get the idea. So if the side length is 9 on one side of the square, then both sides of the square are going to be 9. If one side length is 12, then both sides will be 12. And then we have some unknown side of the longer or the bigger square, but its other side length will also be c. Then just ask yourself, well, what's 12 times 12? Or what's the area of this square here? Well, it's 144. What's the area of this squared? Well, that's 9 times 9. That's 81. Then you add those two areas together, because the two smaller square, their areas are the same added together as the larger square is. So again, we're going to add those two together. We're going to get 5. 8 plus 4 is 2. Add the 1 up here. So it's 225 is equal to c squared. Okay. Now again, we got to square root both sides. So I grab my calculator and I take the square root of 25, and I find out that that longest side, the hypotenuse side, is 15 in length, because the square root of 25 is 15. So I type in 15. Now you're eventually going to get to some that are decimals. And there's nothing wrong with decimals. We can do decimals. So I'm going to jump ahead. And I'm going to see if it actually gives any other orientation. It doesn't look like it's ever orienting this triangle so the right square is like up here or over there. You just got to remember that the two sides that form that little right angle, wherever that right angle is positioned, think of those two squares as the smaller squares. So that would be one of the smaller squares, and this would be one of the smaller squares. And Once you find their areas, add them together, and that gives you the area of the larger square. So again, I'm going to grab my calculator and find out what 2.3 times 2.3 is. To find out that the area of that small square is 5.29. And then I'm going to add that to the area of this square, but now I got to multiply 4.5 times 4.5 to find out what the area of that square is. That's 20.25. So now I'm going to add that to these two numbers together. That's supposed to be a decimal point. There we go. So add those two together, 5.29. That's going to equal 25.54, and that equals that longer side squared, equals the longer side squared. So now I'm going to square root 25.54 and find out what that C value is when I square root both sides. So square root 25.54, and I find out that C is equal to 5 point, that's supposed to be a decimal, 0.53711507. But I'm going to read the instructions very carefully and notice that it says round to the nearest tenth. Tenth is one decimal place. That's right here. So again, I'm hoping everyone remembers how to round. Since the number to the right of the place I'm rounding to is a 5 or larger, that's going to go up 1. So my final solution would be 5.1 when I round to the nearest decimal place. 1 decimal place. 5.1. Enter. Good work. If you have any questions on this, please bring them to class and I will help you.